Welcome to the first APTN.aero webinar for 2025. Some of you may remember we had some of these kind of around COVID time, post-COVID, so I thought it was time we kicked off again and started sharing some technical info and stories about the aviation technical world. So thanks again all for joining us. And what I will do, first of all, I want to introduce you to my fellow APTN team members, Evgeny Artemov, who is co-founder and director with me, and Valeria Kofra, who is our marketing executive. You'll see a lot of stuff from Valeria on the various social media platforms and emails, and she will be in contact with members as we go along. So just one second here, Valeria, I just want to make you co-host so you can work the rest of the admissions and also to let people in if they want to make a comment or two. So there we go. And Dave, I need to make you a co-host as well. So there we go. All right, I'm going to share a screen with you, kick the ball or get the ball rolling here. Give me 1 second. So yeah, APTN, Aircraft Professionals Technical Network, founded in 2019. And last year, Evgeny Artemov and myself decided to reinvigorate and put new life into APTN in terms of a new platform, a more algorithmic matchmaking, new tools, and some AI as well. So since, I suppose, August last year, we have worked hard to bring a new platform on board, and I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview of where we're at now. And we're okay. If you give me a thumbs up there, Valeria, you can see the screen okay? Yeah, good stuff. And you can hear me okay. So, yeah, so the solution itself, or the platform basically, is a global directory of aircraft technical consultants, as well as a platform where there are enterprise members, clients who can search for consultants. So we're using algorithmic matchmaking to match clients with consultants. We have various integrations and project management tools on the platform. Currently, you're able to contract directly with technical consultants, and there will be a facility to do billing as well in the near future. We also have a small team of people vetting consultants, and clients can review consultants and make comments, and there's a 5-star review program there on the platform. So that's what the homepage looks like. I'm going to show you a couple of slides here of what it looks like from a consultant's perspective and also from a client's perspective. But the clear message here would be that if you haven't already kind of trialed it, there are promo codes available for a free 1-month membership, and you can contact Evgeny or Valeria or myself for your promo code, either through email or through the WhatsApp, and you can trial the system if you haven't already done. We will put a poll up in during the call today, just to check to see how many of you have actually signed up or not. So, or trialed it, I should say. The next slide, this is what it looks like from a consultant's perspective. So you can create your projects, you can accept your projects that would be initiated by the Lessor community or anybody else that's searching for consultants. And you can manage it here. You can chat with the client, the Lessor. There is you can see on the left-hand side here, there's a forum, technical forum board. There will be links to discounts on various services. One you'll hear about later from Melanie on professional indemnity insurance. So that's what it looks like from the tech consultant perspective. From the client lessor perspective, that's what they see. They can create a project searching for consultants for various aircraft inspections, and they can manage several projects at one time. They can chat with consultants, they can contract with consultants, and they can receive invoice directly from consultants. So that's what it looks like from the lessor client perspective. So if you want to trial it, just ask for your promo code, or we can set up a demo for you online or in person. I'm based in Dublin. Evgeny is based in Dublin as well, so we can meet you anytime to do a live demo. So this is kind of an overview of what consultants we have on the platform at the moment. We have over 800 members, and we are currently going through the membership to approve consultants based on their previous experience, on their CVs. So in terms of people who are approved, we are represented in 102 countries worldwide on 5 continents. And you can see from the color scheme there where there are APTN members. The countries in white are areas where we have to work on. We have a panel of what we call APTN chapter leaders in these countries that promote and are the single point of contact for APTN members worldwide. That's just a snapshot from our database, which is it's very small there, but in the top right-hand corner, it shows 882 members on the platform currently. We have several companies signed up in terms of clients, and you might recognize some lessors there, such as Goal, Bocom, WorldStar Aviation. So more and more companies are signing up on the platform as well. So yeah, I mean, the webinar, we'll get going with it now. I just want to make you aware that we will try and do similar webinars at the end of every month, the last Monday of every month. So we're scheduling the next webinar for Monday, the 28th of April at the same time. You will see on the Zoom during the talks this poll question coming up as well, where we'd like you to indicate what topic you would like to hear next in terms of a technical topic for our next webinar. So you can select one or more topics there, and we'll try and go with your preferences when we set up the next tech forum. So that's it from my side. I will hand over now to Dave Gleeson, who is formerly Chief Technical Officer at Zephyrus Aviation, and he was prior to that with CIT. Dave, you're going to talk to us a little bit about the lessor's perspective in terms of aircraft inspections.
Sure. Yeah, thanks very much, Alan. So let me just share my page.
Stop mine first, and then it should be able to get in.
Okay, can you see that?
Not just yet. Yep, we have you there now.
There you go. Okay, yeah. Perfect. Great. Okay, so thanks very much for the introduction, Alan. Yeah, I was with CIT previously, then CIT were purchased by Aviation, and then Dubai Aerospace, I worked with them, and then more recently Zephyrus. So I've seen inspections taking place from various different lessors, and Alan asked if I wouldn't mind just sharing some insights or what I've learned along the way and present it to the wider group. So first off, anyway, let's have a look. The reasons for inspections. So we perform the inspections, or we have these midterm inspections performed for various different reasons. So one of the reasons, and a very important reason from the lessor perspective, is risk management. And so within the lessor company itself, risk mitigation is a very important item. And so we need to have a look at each of our aircraft, each of our assets from the risk perspective, and say, what are the risks of a default happening to this aircraft? How do we prevent excessive costs if this aircraft was to come back in kind of a a repossession scenario or in a default situation. And so we need to be constantly keeping on top of that. And I suppose if you look at the process from a lessor's perspective as to how we would typically plan for inspections on aircraft, we would certainly in the past, what we've done is typically every quarter we would have a look at our entire fleet, go through it line by line, and have a look at which aircraft was last inspected and which one is due next. And alongside us on the technical team with that, we would typically have someone from the risk team, because they would have an input as well as to if they thought a credit was weak, or if they thought an operator was in difficulty, that we should also inspect that aircraft as well. So they would chime in on that, and that would perhaps escalate the timing for an inspection on that aircraft. And typically then we'd have a policy whereby an inspection on each aircraft, we wouldn't see each aircraft every year, depends on the size of the fleet, of course, but we would try and see certainly the lesser credits or the smaller airlines or airlines in any kind of difficulty. We would try and see them more frequently than we would see the better credits. And so we kind of keep on top of it that way. Preparing for the return of an aircraft, another important reason for the inspection of an aircraft. So about 12 months out from an inspection of an aircraft, we would certainly like to go and have a look at the aircraft itself, and to establish, I suppose, A, it helps us get some contact with the customer. B, it allows us to understand, what's the condition of the aircraft now, how does it deviate from the expected return conditions and what we're promising to the next lessee. And so it starts the ball rolling. And alongside that, we typically have a technical return meeting for the aircraft or for that particular asset 12 months out as well, at least. And so you're starting to kick the can, or not kick the can, you're starting to prepare for the return of that aircraft. As due diligence for a pre-purchase. So when we're purchasing aircraft or taking aircraft into the fleet or assets into the fleet, we would certainly like to go and have a look at it. Again, just to make sure it is as it's described. There's nothing untoward with the asset, that it's well presented, well looked after, and it's a good opportunity to actually see it. A lot of times in a pre-purchase, you're protected in some form by the fact that you have the lease in place and you're purchasing an aircraft typically on lease. And so you're protected by the return conditions of the lease, but you'd still like to have a look at the aircraft and make sure that it's been well looked after and that the records are being well looked after. Similarly, prior to the sale of an asset, when you're selling an aircraft or an asset to another lessor, or indeed to an operator, they'll want to have a look at the aircraft. We'll want to accompany them with it, so we'll set up an inspection of that with one of our reps to be on site and to handhold and to go through the process and make sure they're happy with the asset that they're purchasing. To put pressure on a lessee where needed. This is one, if a lessee is in default, if they're struggling with payments, if we think they're not behaving correctly, it's useful to set up an inspection just to remind them that we're here, we're looking at the asset, and that there's a possibility, at least in their minds, that we might want to repossess the aircraft. So in a sense, you're kind of rattling the cage a little bit just to show them that you're there. It also, if they are in difficulty, it's good practice as well, of course, to have someone go out on site and pay them a visit, make sure, have a look at the records physically. Where are the records? Put your hand on them, make sure you know where they are. How quickly can you get status reports off them? What are they able to do? Because typically if they're in default, they're struggling. So they're struggling across various departments and you need to stay on top of that. Following the notification of an insurable event or an incident, and of course, if there's a major damage after happening to the asset, or there's an issue, you want to have someone on site to be there when repairs are taking place. We had one a couple of years back where an aircraft skidded off a runway, and we need to have someone there immediately, have someone on the ground keeping an eye on the whole process of bringing that aircraft back into operation. It allows for contact with the technical team. So again, that kind of lines up with the pre-return of an aircraft as well. So a lot of the times you mightn't really be in contact very frequently with the technical team of the operator. So by having someone go out and have an inspection, by setting up that process, at least you open a channel of communication that mightn't have been there previously. For the investors, to demonstrate asset protection. And so that's something as a lessor, we're always careful to make sure that we're protecting the actual asset value and the value, of course, for the investors who ultimately own it if it's not our own. And so in order to demonstrate that, you need to show that you perform these. You can show them the extracts from your lease that give you the right to have these inspections and say, this is another form of protection for your asset. We do look after it. We do pay regular visits, and we will be monitoring it's the performance of the operator. And then finally, to ensure the aircraft and records are being looked after. So that's kind of self-explanatory, but it backs up all of those other things. That's ultimately why you're going there, is to make sure the aircraft and the records are being looked after. The lease considerations then. So obviously the lease has stuff to say about, you know, the actual inspections. And so the language will differ from lessor to lessor, but ultimately you'll certainly in your lease template, you'll have language in there to say that you have the right to go and inspect the asset at, you know, when you so choose, along with bringing prospective purchasers, financiers, or lessees with you. Because obviously, you know, you could be selling the asset, as mentioned, you may be hand-holding, bringing someone along because you're looking to sell it, or you may be looking to refinance it. So there might be a reason to have a financier with you. And you may want to bring the next lessee with you to do an inspection, which wouldn't be unusual for an aircraft that you're currently remarketing. Let's say it is 12 months out. Before I go on to the next point, before I go on to the next point, just on that one. So the lessee, of course, will chime in on the lease as well and try and water down that language that's in the lease, because they'll want to, you know, limit your ability to come on site. But ultimately, this is pretty much a red line for a lessor, is that you need to be able to go and see the aircraft. And while you can mitigate in some instances, you can say, look, we will certainly work with you to avoid, you know, disruption to your operation or whatever. You have to have a conversation with them, and you have to say, look, we'll be reasonable. We don't want to upset your operation. We're not in the business of upsetting your operation, but, you know, can you find a suitable slot for us to inspect the aircraft? Typically, then it takes place at night time. When we're looking at those quarterly reviews of the fleet and planning for inspections, we'll try and avoid June, July, August in the Northern Hemisphere to avoid any, you know, disruption to the lessee, and schedule in as many as we can for winter. Following an insurable event or an event of loss, obviously you have language in the lease which ensures that you can go along and inspect the aircraft there as well. And if the lessee is in default, similarly, you can go along and have an inspection too. And as I mentioned, there will be caveats that the lessee will seek, not interfere with the operation, not above a certain number of inspections per year, not during the peak season. And you'll work with them on that to try and mitigate that. But obviously, all cards are off the table if they do go into default, because you'll then ultimately have that right. There'll also be quiet enjoyment. They'll raise the quiet enjoyment argument and say, well, you know, your inspector is going to disrupt our operation. Again, we'll try and be reasonable, but quiet enjoyment doesn't really supersede any other point in the lease. It's there in the lease, all right, but if they're in default and there is language in the lease to ensure that you can inspect the aircraft, you can inspect the aircraft. So then the inspector themselves, so typically aircraft lessors like dealing with people they're familiar with. So if you have an inspector you've been using in the past, that's typically the first person you'll call to come and have a look again and to help them out. We just get used to working with people that we're familiar with, and I think that's self-explanatory. Using local inspectors where possible does help to keep the costs down, particularly if you've, you know, a very diverse fleet. You need to be very conscious of your technical budget, so you're looking at trying to keep that low. And if you can use an inspector in the region, that's great, and that ties in with the first point. If you use that inspector in a particular region, you'll use them again in the same region next time. It's easier to engage with a third-party agency rather than individual inspectors for insurance reasons, and in contract number reasons. So it's handier to negotiate with a company who has several consultants and, you know, agree a contract there, agree terms there, rather than individually with each contractor, just for a sheer volume of paperwork. Also, there would be insurance reasons, as I mentioned. So sometimes lessors will have an insurance requirement. You know, they need to have 2 million professional indemnity insurance, for example, and the individual consultant might struggle to get that. Whereas if they're going through an agency, that can be done for them. Local knowledge is an advantage, as I mentioned. Familiar with the MRO is really helpful because it allows the inspector on site to, you know, talk to people he might be he or she might be familiar with at the MRO, and so glean some additional information, find out, you know, if this aircraft is in regularly, any particular issue that you see, where are the records, how is the operation. And flexibility. So the inspector obviously needs to be flexible because the schedules can shift all over the place. We've had inspections where, particularly in the US, the operators move the aircraft around quite a lot. You can be several weeks chasing an aircraft before you can actually get the aircraft to land where it was planned to land. So that can be difficult. So you do need an inspector with flexibility. And then the inspection itself, Communication is important. The understanding of the requirements, as I mentioned, there's lots of different types of inspection. So you're looking at different things. So if you're looking at a pre-purchase inspection or a pre-sale inspection, it might just be a hand holding. It might just be, here's the aircraft, have a walk around. That's fine. If it's an aircraft that's coming back in 12 months, you need to understand that the requirement is different. So now you're starting to look for perhaps STCs or modifications that have been done on the aircraft. You're having a look at the dent and buckle status of the aircraft, any big dings around the cargo bay doors or items like that, or any particular branding on the aircraft. So these are items that you need to look out for there. And so communication with the lessor would be really critical to make sure that everyone knows what the expectation is. A well-structured report highlighting the issues is really helpful. So the reports generally that we see, certainly lately, have been very, very good. They're well structured. They start with the exterior, go through each, it's chapterized, and you talk about the exterior, then the interior, the engines, the APU, and you go through all those various sections, well laid out, and highlighting any issues that you see along the way. Some narrative, it's really useful to see what the inspector thinks, because as much as you can have that structured format, it's nice to understand that if the inspector something doesn't seem right, or the inspector has an additional concern or thinks that the aircraft isn't looked after, the inspectors are really good and know what they're doing. And you do have to, you do take the value in what they say, and really their opinion really is very worthwhile to get. Photographs, enough photographs to inform. You don't want millions of photographs, but you do want enough photographs to inform you, particularly on a pre-return inspection. So it's really useful for, a photograph of obvious findings that you see around the aircraft, and a label just to say where this was, because sometimes you'll get a picture of, something, a crack broken somewhere, and you've no idea what it is. So just some kind of structured layout to photographs. Photographs of data plates are really useful. And, I think a photograph can be fantastic, showing an example of, an issue that you found to the lessee. A record snapshot where appropriate. So have a look for the physical records. Where are they? How are they stored? We've seen instances where inspectors have come and told us, the records are stored in a small room off the planning office. It's supposed to be fireproof, but they have, a filing cabinet jammed in the door to keep it open because people are going in and out all the time, and it's not actually fireproof. So again, that allows us to raise the issue and get that corrected. Was the lessee able to produce reports or status reports in a timely manner? You would hope so, but a lot of times they struggle, and that struggle shows you that at the return of the aircraft, it's going to be really difficult, because if they're struggling to just produce ad hoc reports, it doesn't bode well when there's several years of reports to actually present at the end. And branding, is there any branding in the aircraft? Sometimes the lessee mightn't even be conscious of it. There could be small items of branding around the cabin particularly, and they haven't thought of it for the return of the aircraft. So again, good to get a photograph of it so that you can start to plan for what's involved when it comes back. Modifications and STCs, same as that really. Issues then otherwise, so typically these will take place at nighttime. Unfortunately, it's just the way it is. That tends to be when they give you a slot, and it's not easy for photographs photographs of the exterior in particular at nighttime. The access can be limited, and sometimes you can be stuck with a very short downtime. So the lessee will tell you, okay, look, we'll work with you, but you've got 3 hours, go. So you tend to be rushed. So that can be difficult, and we have to work with the inspectors on that and understand that from their perspective, time can be tight. So then again, back to communication. What's the priorities? What do we actually need to see in this inspection? What are we looking for? The lessee will say they're too busy to support records requirements. Very believable. They probably are very busy, but can you send us a report the next day? Can you send us a report within 2 days? Scheduling the aircraft can be moved around at short notice, as I mentioned earlier, flexibility. And that's it really. So that's high level, short and sweet, but hopefully in some way helpful. If anyone has any questions, by all means, send me a message afterwards or drop me a question on LinkedIn either or through Alan. So happy to answer any questions.
Very useful, very informative. It's great to hear the lessor's perspective on what they're looking for in an aircraft inspection. And I think you gave a fantastic overview of that there. So hopefully it's helpful for all our technical consultants that are on board. I think we have over 38 people on the call at the moment. So hopefully you find it useful. I just kick off with, I think you've covered some of the questions that I already You mentioned local talent, Dave. How important is local talent? And, you know, if you get somebody within a 50 kilometers radius, 100 kilometers radius, obviously it's not always possible to get somebody at the location of the aircraft. Does it help in saving costs? Does it help with local knowledge?
It does. It really does help in saving costs. And where we find it particularly helpful as well then is, for example, in follow-up items. So a lot of times you'll have follow-up items for an inspection. And as I mentioned, the lessee mightn't have been able to produce a report or might be trailing some item of information that they need to give you. And, you know, they're slow and you're just not getting it from them. A local rep is has much easier ability to chase them and follow up on that, perhaps visit them again, because they can be, as you say, within 50 or 100 kilometers. It's perfect, you know, drop in again, get whatever it is we need or whatever we're missing, and move on. It also allows them to get some information. You know, a local inspector will have knowledge of the facility typically, and knowledge of even some of the people in it. I mean, ultimately, it's great if you can get someone who even worked at the MRO where the inspections are taking place, because that way you'll get a lot more insight, you'll get a lot more flexibility and help in actually getting access to the aircraft and getting support and documentation as well, rather than sending in someone from far side of the world who doesn't know the lay of the land.
Yeah, I have a question there from Rodrigo. I think that's through Aero. From your experience, is there any item that is typically overlooked during inspection?
Oh, that's a very good question. I probably overlooked that myself. It's a good question. No, I don't think there's one. I don't know of one that stands out where it's typically one item that people are always forgetting. But I mean, there is a risk that you do miss items, and I think that's where a structured report really helps, because the structured report will steer. And certainly, as we get these third-party consultant firms setting up inspections, they will tend to have a flow or a guide for their inspector to follow along the way, so that they tick all the boxes that you actually need. I think going in there without a structure means you could come away and the next day realize, you know, you didn't get a look at a certain part of the aircraft, or you didn't get a certain document. So I think it's good to have a chart beforehand. And to that, Rodrigo, it'd probably be a good point to actually, as part of that communication with the lessor, get a list of, you know, what snapshot of records do they actually want, so that you can understand what it is they're looking for on this instance. Because again, as we mentioned, the inspections differ. So for different inspections, you'll have different levels of documentation you might want. It's a good question though, but I haven't seen any one particular item that's dropped.
Yeah. Ugur Pishkin asked a question about checklists for various aircraft types. I know that's kind of proprietary to various lessors and tech service companies, but it's one thing that APTN.aero will be able to help you with, Ugur, because we have some templates that we can share with members if they need them from time to time. So come back to us on that one if you need help with templates. So Risheshki is asking, what's the criteria for the local inspectors to be on board? I assume that's a question for me in terms of being on board APTN.aero. So if you look at the homepage of the website, Rishkesh, you'll see there is a little video kind of that helps you navigate through the platform. So it's really just basically about uploading your CV, your resume, and your most recent experience, and then you will be included in any search for any position that's been sought in your area. So that's the way to handle that particular one. So I'm just conscious of time, and we're at the half-hour mark. So if there are no more questions, there's one final question here. I suppose it's oh yes, it's comment from Daniel. He said one item that could come up is that installed engines are not the titled engines.
Yes.
So how's this normally managed from the lessor's perspective? Is it required to schedule separate inspections for the engines?
It's a good question. Again, it depends on the nature of it. Typically, we wouldn't, unless it was, you know, unless there was a reason we specifically thought that there might be a risk to a particular engine. But again, it is a very good point, and that's something that, you know, that's going back to Rodrigo's point. That's something that you could actually get that's missed on an inspection. Would be, you know, someone didn't make a note that the fact that the title engines weren't installed, it was a different engine. Again, it depends on the level of inspection. That's something that the inspector really would typically see. But if it's a quick walk around, it's something that would be easy to miss. So hopefully that helps.
Okay, that's great. So on that note, thanks, Dave, very much for your very informative presentation. We'll move along now to our second presentation. Melanie Daglish is going to talk to us a little bit about professional indemnity insurance. What is it? When is it needed? And maybe some examples. But first of all, I have to help share the screen for Melanie. Are you there, Melanie?
Yep, I'm there. Hopefully you can hear
All right,
me.
let me get this presentation up for you here now. So give me one
Thank
second.
you.
Dun, 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 dun. That's not it. Give me a second now. There we go. Bugs in the system. Stop share again. Sorry, excuse me for a second. I'll get this going. Minimize this. Okay, is it there?
Yes, it's just come
You're
up.
there. Okay, I'll just do the full screen. You just let me know when you want to move the slides along, Melanie, and I'll hand it over to you. All right.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Alan. Thanks for your help. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to see so many people joining the call this afternoon, especially when part of the subject for discussion is insurance, because that's generally no one's favourite subject. So that's great to see everyone. So my name's Melanie, kindly introduced by Alan. I'm a insurance underwriter based in London, and I work for a company called ITIC or ITIC. So you can say either way. I tend to go for ITIC because it's a bit quicker. But ITIC are a specialist professional indemnity insurer. We are based in London. There is a team of 20 of us sitting in our offices, but we actually insure businesses based worldwide. So we're quite niche, but with a worldwide kind of focus. So I don't know, perhaps Alan, if you can flick on to the next screen. Yeah, perfect. Thank you. So because it's a name that I think will be quite unfamiliar to lots of you, I thought it might be worthwhile just saying a few words on who ITIC actually are as an insurer. So we were established way back in 1925. So obviously those of you who are awake on a Monday afternoon will have worked out that means that this year is our centenary year. So we turn 100 this year. But we go all the way back to 1925. And our origins are actually all to do with shipping. So we started out and we were like an insurer who was there to protect shipbrokers. So when you had this big kind of ocean going cargo carrying vessel that got into a spot of bother, you had all this insurance for the ship, you had all the insurance for the cargo, but no one ever protected the chap who was in the middle, who brought the charterers and the owners together. So there was a whole idea behind it. It was that we were set up to basically help protect the guy in the middle, the broker. And obviously, fast forward 100 years, the insurance has changed and it's diversified, but the idea of protecting the policyholder is still very much at the heart of what we do. We are managed by a company called Thomas Miller. So if you have had any dealings at all with the shipping side of the world, then you might know the name of Thomas Miller. They're the owners of the world's largest insurer of ocean-going vessels, called the UK P&I Club. So we have a good, strong heritage. We currently write around $71 million in premium. So that premium, I say, comes from businesses that are based worldwide. And all the premium is is generated by writing professional indemnity insurance. So we are specialists in that area. Perhaps if you could flick on to the next slide, Alan. Thank you. So yeah, so in terms of who we insure, is marine, aviation and offshore. So say our heritage is very much marine based. That's kind of where we've been dominant for many years. But aviation is a sector that is growing for us, and it has been growing consistently at around 20% year on year, pretty much since from just before we went into lockdown, which ironically was Alan and I first met way back then. In the days before lockdown, I remember coming over to Dublin and speaking to APTN members then. And ever since then, the premium has continued to grow from aviation, which is great. So we have around 300 aviation insureds. They're based worldwide. We tend to have most numerically in the UK, which kind of makes sense because it's where we're based. So it's kind of the home market. But also Ireland, for obvious reasons, home of the aircraft leasing community. We've got a lot of insureds who are based in Ireland. And then also we have a business in Australia, which I think is down to having a good underwriting team who are based down in Australia. But as I say, all of those 300 companies are all companies who are working within aviation. Perhaps if you put the next slide on. So this I thought might be of interest to you. So just to really show out of that 300, how does that break down in terms of activity? And 40% of that 300 are doing activities that are very similar to yourselves joining the call today. So they're effectively consultants working on behalf of aircraft owners, lessors, and also aircraft operators. So providing consultancy and advice. And we've also separated out surveyors on this one for you. So you've got 40% consultants and 8% surveyors. Really, that was just because lots of companies will tell me that they do consultancy and that they also do surveying. But yeah, this is sort of, you are accounting for kind of just under half of the of that 300 insured at the moment. So we have a real strong heritage in insuring professionals within aviation. So yeah, so consultants, surveyors, trainers, designers, certifiers, basically anyone who provides services to an aircraft owner or an aircraft operator without actually going as far as insuring the aircraft itself, because we're not here to protect the interests of the aircraft. So perhaps, Alan, when you're ready, if you could flick on to the next slide. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. So typical insured activities. I thought it might be worthwhile just saying a few words on what we consider to be a typical insured activity for someone who is an aircraft technical professional. Well, clearly surveying is a big part of it, and we insure, as you've seen, a good number of surveys, and this can be surveying an aircraft for whatever reason. So it can be performing the inspections in accordance with the terms of the lease. It can be obviously on aircraft delivery and redelivery at ad hoc moments throughout the lease, really whatever is required by either the lessor, or sometimes we will see people who act on behalf of the operator. So certainly aircraft inspections are a big part of that package, but we also insure people who do surveys post-accident. So they will go in either on behalf of the operator, could be the lessee, could even be the insurance company. So they might go in and survey the aircraft post-accident. Valuations form part of this. Valuation is obviously a really important part of the kind of the discipline of aircraft surveying, and also pre-purchase inspections. So valuations and pre-purchase inspections, or lease delivery or lease redelivery inspections, obviously they can give way to claims. There can be times when you have disputes over the information, but they are a very important thing for us to ensure. Also, in terms of surveying people who do boroscope inspections, so if you're boroscoping the engine, we can insure you for the provision of those boroscope inspections. And we do have, there's certainly one area where we have seen claims, so I can fill you in on some of the issues we've seen arising from that shortly. In terms of other activities, moving away from the survey, more generally kind of lease management activities. So anyone who's working on behalf of the lessor, really being their kind of eyes and ears on the ground and monitoring the performance of the aircraft on lease. we can insure you for providing those services, and also more generally providing services in relation to aircraft and asset marketing and remarketing. And obviously really moving into this area as well, there's also camo, which is a really big area for us. It's a very important area. So obviously we are aware that when aircraft come off an operating lease, quite often they go under the camo of the aircraft lessor. And if the aircraft lessor is using a third-party agency to provide those camo services, we can insure you for any potential negligence, errors or omissions in the performance of that camo function. Camo again is an interesting area, and it is an interesting area where we have also see claims. So I will touch upon that in a second. And next slide, please, Alan. Thank you. So just thought it would be important as well just to say something about what we don't insure, because you know, saying what you don't insure can sometimes be as important as talking about what you do insure. So this one here I've just put on there just to be clear. So we don't insure any liabilities that would arise from what we would term to be defective workmanship. So if your role is repairing or maintaining or installing or anything like that, if you are physically actually touching the aircraft and providing those repair or maintenance surveys, that's not something that we can insure you for. And that's just because there's a whole different insurance market out there that will pick up this particular area of activity. So just wanted to be clear on that. But if you are doing anything else, say if you're surveying, if you're overseeing the maintenance, if you're providing recommendations in respect of aircraft maintenance, that's absolutely fine. It's just when you pick up the tool and start doing the work yourself that you, in insurance terms, you then move into a different playing field, really. Okay, next slide, please, Alan. Okay, so talking about things going wrong then, I think obviously over the years I've given many insurance presentations on this subject, and people are always interested to hear about, I think, when it's gone wrong, because I think quite often the best way to learn is from seeing the mistakes of others. And we certainly can't complain because it's what keeps us in a job. So yes, claims do happen. Firstly, I would say that out of all the claims that we see, around half of them will have like what we would feel is no merit whatsoever. So the cover is there to protect the policyholder if there is an allegation of negligence. Now, if there's an allegation of negligence and that's unfounded, then we pay to defend. And if there's an allegation of negligence and it does have merit, then what we'll do is we'll work with the policyholder to basically resolve that issue and obviously pay that claim on their behalf. So claim scenarios that we have seen, we had a particularly memorable claim which was arising from a borescope inspection on an aircraft. So they were managing a fleet of aircraft engines on behalf of the lessor. I think from memory there were 37 engines that they performed an inspection when the engines were redelivered. Obviously they thought that their inspection was absolutely fine. They handed it over to their client. The client seemed very happy, and then they asked the management organisation if they could prepare for the engines to go into storage. So they did what they were asked, and you know, a few days later the engines are shipped out to the desert or wherever it is that they're stored. And then a short while afterwards, maybe around a month after, there's a new potential lessee for this fleet of engines. So the technical guy who's appointed by the potential lessee asks if he can see a copy of the inspection reports that were drawn up upon when the engines were redelivered. So obviously those reports are then disclosed. But the technical guy who's appointed by the potential new lessee spots the fact that the surveyor who did the borescope inspection wasn't qualified to survey that particular type of engine. So it meant that even though factually those reports were entirely correct, they actually couldn't be used. So the whole thing had to be redone. So the aircraft engines were brought out of storage, back to the place of the lessor. They were resurveyed. They were obviously packaged back up again, if you like, and then they were sent back out to the desert. So the whole claim came in at around $600,000. Our legal team worked on it, and we got that down to, and we settled at $341,000. So it was still a significant amount of money that we were spending to basically make sure that the matter was resolved. And because of the way aviation insurances work, because there was no damage to the aircraft engine, there was no bodily injury caused to anybody as a result of the use of any of these engines that had been surveyed. There was no cover elsewhere. It was purely a matter that was for a professional indemnity insurance. So that one is one that we've seen there. In terms of claims arising from camos, very often we'll see camo claims where an aircraft ends up being on the ground. when it should be in the air flying. So clearly you end up with claims there for things like, you know, financial loss. So obviously on the leasing side, it would be obviously, you know, loss of use of the aircraft. On the general aviation side, it tends to come in more as like a, you know, kind of loss of use, loss of charter hire. So we see quite a few there. We've also been involved in disputes when an aircraft has less camo and it's gone over to somebody else, and someone else has looked at the aircraft and said, you know, hang on a second, there's a lot of corrosion damage to this engine and this should have been picked up before. So we've seen quite a lot of action there as well. And as I said, it doesn't mean to say that all of these things have any merit. They very often don't, but they do need defending. And what we have arranged for members of APTN, because we appreciate the nature of the work that you're doing, and of also the importance of you signing up to groups such as APTN, kind of bringing everybody together, is that we can offer a discount on rating of the insurance for those of you who are members of APTN who would like to inquire with regards to professional indemnity insurance. So I would say a typical limit for kind of a small kind of surveying firm, you'd be looking at anywhere between $500,000 and $2 million in terms of your limit. And it is something that we do our best to make sure that we're able to provide that at a competitive cost to you.
And just in terms of the coverage is one thing, Melanie, the cost of the technical service or consultant, I should say, is approximately 10% of that number, am I right in saying? Or
yeah, I mean, I would say the premium is going to start at around $750. So that's
per annum.
Yeah, per annum. That's right, exactly. So it tends to kind of move up from there. But yeah, if it's you know, you're kind of working for yourself, chances are you're going to be looking at $750 to $1,000 around there for the lower limit.
And if anybody wants to learn more about that, you can contact myself or Evgeny, and we can actually, I think on the website there is a link, and it'll bring you to Melanie's application form, and you can apply through that mechanism. Yeah. Sorry for interrupting you there.
That's okay. No, that's fine. I was just going to say last slide, because I've just got a few points to summarize there. So yeah, so just a few words to finish up then. So just a reminder on the PI. So it is there to protect the interests of the policyholder. It's not about protecting the aircraft. It's about protecting the people who provide services, often to aircraft owners or operators, lessors or lessees. So typical insureds are surveyors, consultants, and a whole range of technical experts. And it's there to protect you regardless of whether the allegation that is made against you has any merit. It provides cover for defence costs as much as it will provide cover for actually paying out a liability. And I think certainly from the perspective of a lot of the aircraft leasing companies, we are seeing a lot of them requiring their technical experts to hold professional indemnity insurance. And I think from that angle, it's a benefit for them, because they know that that individual has sufficient financial support in place should there ever be any need to call upon it. So it's something that can be beneficial to all parties. So I think that was kind of it from me. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Great, Melanie. That was really good overview, and I think it's important everybody understands what's covered and what's not covered, and also they're very interested in to know, you know, the level of coverage. I know that some of the major lessors will require, you know, tens of millions or even hundreds of millions of coverage, and that kind of rules out independent technical guys as such. But then if they work with the big tech service companies, then that's a way around that. Those guys have to have that coverage to cover the big lessor fleets, as far as I understand. Just a couple of questions that come to mind. You mentioned earlier that ITIC is a mutual insurance company as opposed to a commercial insurer. What does that mean exactly?
Yeah, thank you. It's a good question. So it's quite an alien concept, I think, for aviation, but a mutual insurer is basically a not-for-profit entity. So we obviously, if we underwrite policies for our policyholders, we charge a premium, and then we take that premium, and that premium is invested. So we then keep a pot of money that is basically the premium plus the investment income, and that's where we pay the claims. So you know, at the moment we have, I think, about $182 million in the free reserve. So that money is there to pay the claims of the companies that we insure. The good news, if you are insured with a mutual is if the mutual finishes their financial year and they have more money than they need in those free reserves, they actually give it back. So it's effectively like you receive a dividend as if you were a shareholder. So at the moment with ITIC, we're giving back continuity in the form of a continuity credit, but that means that people are getting discounts of between 20 and 30% at renewal.
In other words, if your premium is €800 or dollars, you could end up just paying 600 at the end of the year if you have a good
exactly,
year.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Because it's the way that discount is decided, it's all to do with the performance of the club. It's not based on your individual claims experience.
How does the coverage work in terms of, let's say I have one project a year, I have 10 projects a year. Does my $800 cover all 10 projects, or how does that work?
Yeah, so what we'll do is we'll ask to know for a declaration of income, and then we rate it on the income. So if you want cover for the 10 projects, just give us an income figure that it includes all of those 10 projects, and it will provide that full cover. If you want it contract specific, then just tell us that level of income. I would say though, generally you're better just insuring all of the work, because you know there is a minimum premium, so you may find that contract specific you're just below the minimum, so you might as well have the benefit of the cover across the board.
Very good.
Alan, Gennady here. I have a question.
Gennady, go ahead.
Hey, great webinar. And Melanie, thank you. I missed the beginning, but I have a question. So sometimes we are at the border of giving technical and marketing advice. Yeah. So that's related to the coverage. So once you're independent, and obviously world is going consolidated and global, but we need to defend the individual space for everybody. How is your coverage working when you do something outside technical as well?
Yeah, so basically we can insure you when you provide obviously services to the aircraft. So obviously the technical is what we're talking about today, but if those services included providing assistance with aircraft marketing, as long as we know that you're doing them, generally it's no problem for us to insure them.
Good stuff. All right.
And on a separate note, do you provide D&O insurance, NI insurance, directors and officers insurance?
Yeah, so we can.
For companies?
We can insure it. Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, we are a PI specialist, so it's not our strong suit, if you will. But if you do need it, we can give you a quotation to include the D&O cover. Yeah.
Super, thank you. So
one last question I see from Rodrigo's here. Does the PI cover all personnel under your company? So in other words, when you're putting in your insurance application, you would tell yourselves how many people are working for you, and then you would give a quote on that basis on the level of work that you're doing. Is that correct?
That's correct, yeah. So on the form, we'll ask obviously for the company name and the staff numbers. But yeah, as long as you give us the name and the income that you tell us it relates to the activities that are, you know, the income that's derived by all of those staff members, then they are all insured under the policy.
Very good. All right. On that note, I'm just conscious of time. We've 6 minutes to go to the top of the hour. I'm trying to get the first webinar in on time. And thank you very much, Melanie, for that very interesting presentation. I'm sure there'll be lots of people looking for your application on the platform. And thanks once again. I'm going to conclude. Just want to thank Dave Gleeson for his very valuable presentation, and to Melanie for taking part today of their own free time, just to inform and educate us all here. I just had a quick look at the poll that we put up there, and it seems like Aircraft Digital Records is top of the poll at engines, borescope and preservation number 2, followed by landing gears and APUs. So we'll take that input on board for our next webinar, and we'll get you some interesting speakers for that. The second question, I noticed nearly 77% of you haven't tried the version 2.0 of the platform, so I would encourage you to do so. You can get a discount code to trial it for 1 month, and you'll see that for the tech consultants, it's a very reasonable monthly fee, or if you want to play it annually, is a little bit of a discount, but it is no more than 1 full day's technical consultant average fee, so it is good value for money. So reach out if you want a discount code to trial it, or upload your details if you're not already on the platform, and I'm sure you'll find it very useful. So on that basis, I'm going to close today's webinar and leave it. If you have any questions afterwards, we'll try and address them. And we look forward to seeing you all again at the end of April for the next APTN.aero webinar. Thank you all. Thank you.